I cannot wait for Thursdays because then we've got time to chat to you. I mean, we chat to the public and we do all the requests that we can do because this show is just a service to the public to tell you more about technical analysis. And of course, a lot of you also use this to get an opinion of what you think you must do. So let's kick off with a few requests that we had. The first one we had was from Jacques. Jacques said to me, listen, Frans, can we maybe have a look at silver? I think he's not a gold bull, but rather a silver bull. If I look at this chart, look what we see here. The silver went down all the way to about September last year. And then suddenly after that, it started to move up rapidly. Well, Jacques, if I look at this chart, it looks like you were maybe a little bit late. If you did not buy silver as yet, I think maybe it's time to sit back and wait, because look at this massive, beautiful rally from about middle May. It's from $14 all the way up to $18 almost in a whisk. And that just tells you that the index or the silver dollar price rallied a little bit hard. So I'll wait before I'll add on to my position. What I like about the chart is every time that there's a little bit of a pullback, there is some buyers. That's quite interesting. If you see that on a chart, that every time that there's a tiny pullback, and the moment there's a pullback, it comes back and it attracts some buyers, you must know there's some guys that's keen on buying it. Well, we've seen it with the gold price the other day. When it got back to $1,500, it wasn't long before the buyers started to buy again. So yes, Jacques, I like the silver price, but I think you may be too late. But as a lot of viewers of this show likes to chase momentum, they don't want for pullbacks, they don't want to wait for pullbacks, they just want to rush in and buy. Now, if you want to add on to your position, it will only be above that high. That's 1945. We're sitting now at 1856, so above 1945, we can maybe look at buying in if you want to chase momentum. And my targets to the top here will be 1998. And if it goes a little bit higher, we can see 20.8 and maybe as high as 20.9. Let's call it $21 in the silver dollar price. Well, Wesley said, listen, I would like to have a look at Sabanya. We a few weeks ago actually said to some of our readers that we need to take some profit on Sabanya because the stock just rallied too far ahead of itself. And we then called, that was the double top that we saw. We said, listen, we think that it had a beautiful rally. We should probably see a pullback. And Wesley, we waited again for the share to come back. And we then called it close to around this 15, let's call it 16 Rand 50 level as a buy. And of course, you will probably say to me, Frans, but how did you spot the buy? So let's just go to the candlestick chart, because that usually holds the key for us. And I just want to show you, Wesley, before we address your question there. There you are. There was the nice sell-off. There's your double top that you can see. It triggered the sell-off all the way to the downside. And then we saw this little hammer, or maybe some guys will say that is a dragonfly doji. I would rather see it as a hammer, because after a nice sell-off, you usually find a hammer. And it wasn't long. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after that, the share price went from about 17 Rand to where it is 21 Rand now. Now, Wesley, I think he's holding the stock. He didn't say that he wants to sell or lock in profits. Wesley, what makes me a little bit nervous, we're close to this 21 Rand level again. That tells me that every time that Sabanya gets to around 21 Rand, there's a little bit of nervousness around. We see a breakaway gap here. In actual fact, there's another gap here to the downside. There you are. This can easily be a shooting star. Now, a shooting star sometimes tell you that the stock has rallied too far, and it also wants to give us a pullback. Now, if you are a trader, I will actually say to you, if you look at this chart, when it gets below 20 Rand 41, we can easily close this gap at 20 Rand and 16 cents. And I mean, after this beautiful rally in a matter of a few days, from 17 Rand to 20, almost 21 Rand, if you want to lock in profit, yes, you can do so. Let's have a look at the long-term chart, because that is actually key to a lot of technical investors. They like the chart. They like what Mr. Vroneman is starting to do in the company. And remember, he took over Lonman and he's busy fixing up the company. Now, if you look at Sabanya's price here, And this is now a weekly chart, a line chart. And we can see since about September last year when it was, can you believe it, around 7 Rand. It's now close to 21 Rand. What do I see here is that every time that there's a pullback, look what we see here. There is some buyers. First of all, the trend is clearly to the upside. I just want to have a look at the, just give me a little bit of a chance here. I want to put in a 200-day moving average because I think we are above that. I just want to have a look here because that will give us an answer that the long-term trend is also now positive for the medium to the long-term investor. There you are. You can see here clearly that 200-day moving average, there you are, that's that red line. It's turned into a support, so I'm bullish on the stock. Oh yes, but it did rally away from that. You can see the gap there is quite big, so you can easily see a pullback. For a medium to a long-term investor, I think it's time to hold on to the stock. If you're keen on locking in profit as a trader, yes, I showed you. You can maybe on that almost shooting star candle, you can get nervous and maybe lock in your profit if you want to. But if you've got a medium to a long-term view, I like the chart. I think it's early days. We can maybe see a little bit higher levels from here on. The big thing, remember always, there was that double top. It must get above 22.10 before we know it can go higher. Well, Rashid asked about Metrofile. He said, listen, I would like to have a look at Metrofile. I'm a long-term buyer there. I like the company. Let's have a look here. Let's go to the line chart here. I just want to put it in there. There you are. Rashid, if I look at the chart, I just want to go to a weekly chart because you are a long-term investor. Right, there you are. And let's put in a, I just want to do that. I want to change the moving average to 40 weeks because remember always we use a 40-week moving average on a weekly chart, and on a daily chart we'll use a 200-day moving average to see what is the long-term trend. Rashid, if I look at this chart, is Metrofile had a nice bounce from about, let's say, 140 to almost 2 Rand in a matter of a few weeks, I think 2 weeks here. What I like about the chart is look what it turned this 40-week moving average now into a support. Now that's usually positive. I personally like to see that a 40-week moving average usually remain a support maybe for 2 or 3 weeks because then I know it wants to consolidate above it. What's the reason for doing that? Look what happened here. The chart in March 2018 gave exactly the same phenomenon. It broke above it and it just hovered there for about 2-3 weeks and then the trend to the downside continued. So I like to wait for, let's say, 2-3 weeks to see if it consolidates. So that gives me, first of all, my hint. And if you are a long-term buyer of Metrofile, there's a support there. Let's have a look. Where's the support? Oops, sorry, the resistance. There's the resistance that it needs to overcome. Rashid, it's above 2.12 Rand. When it gets above 2.12 Rand, we can easily see that Metrofile can turn around, because what I like about the chart as well, and you see there's sort of a double bottom scenario. There's the low that was tested in April. There's another low that was tested in around August, and that low was around 1.35 Rand, 1.40 Rand. It attracted some buyers there, and while it's above the 40-week moving average, I like it, but I think the bottom line is above 2.12 Rand. It will trigger a technical buying opportunity. In this case, I'm not going to use this bottom as a stop loss. I'm going to look at this 40-week moving average as my stop loss. And that is sitting at 1.83 Rand. Just a little viewpoint on stop losses. Stop losses can be implemented maybe in a percentage-wise. Some guys say, listen, I don't want to lose more than 3% of my money or 1% or 2% of my money. Some guys will say, yes, I'm taking the low of a support, so a move to the downside. They will say, okay, below 1.33 Rand, I'm wrong. And for me personally, I say in a case like Metrofile, it's not that wise to wait for 1.33, because if you buy it at 2.12 Rand and your stop loss is at 1.33, that's almost a Rand. That's quite a big stop loss. So I will take a narrower one. I will take the 40-week moving average. But that depends purely on your personal view. So always adjust your stop loss strategy And if you don't use a stop loss like myself, I don't like to use stop losses. But I've learned in the past, and I want to tell you as well, when you've got an investment in a share, you need to consider a stop loss, because some shares can actually just fall, and it can just fall like a Steinhoff, and you can lose a lot of money. On an index, it's a different story, but with shares, be careful, because companies can go bankrupt, and then you can lose a lot of money. Let's have a look at Steve's question. Steve is a long-term holder in Jubilee, and he's quite keen on Jubilee, and I like this chart. Steve, look what happens here. Well, it's almost like a copy of Sabanya. It tested the 40-week moving average a while back, and it bounces up. Look what I see. I like this chart, and the reason why I'm liking it, it's higher lows. I will show you guys now. There's the higher lows. There's a low. There's another low. Higher low. Bounce off the line. Another higher low. And above 66 cents, 65 cents, it will give us the next buying opportunity. It's early days. I like this rounding bottom. Look at this beautiful rounding bottom. That's usually positive. Look at this test. For months it tried to hold above 42. It managed to do that. So yes, I think above 65 cents, we'll see the next buying opportunity. And again here, I will use this 40-week moving average as my stop loss, and that sits at 53 cents. And Steve, if it goes up, it can go to 75, even as high as 80 cents, and if we're really lucky, 89 cents. I think it's early days for this company. I like it, but remember, this company worked a long way to find its feet above this 40 cents level, and it looks positive to me. Well, I'll see you just after the break.